We are here again with Jerry Gidel to talk about the ending of 2023. Everything about the commodities with this year end, and also the beginning of 2024. Everything you need to know about corn, soybeans, and wheat. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So today, before the end of the year, we have Jerry again to talk about corn, soybeans. We have some rains in South America, and we had over 20,000 acres, 12,000 acres of hail reported in Argentina. And soybeans in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange have reacted this Friday.
Yes, it's been quite an up and down week. We came in with some very good moisture across Argentina, and really from from Paraná up towards Minas Geraes and up that side of the Brazil. There wasn't that they had some 2 or 3 inch rains, very positive type situations in some of that. The the interesting thing about in both countries, Argentina, Cordoba and Santa Fe had some of the least amount of moisture. They had some, and they've been getting more along than up in Mato Grosso. And Mato Grosso do Sul and Goiás have been a little in the continued shaky situation. But the interesting thing is that the market was on a defensive zone on Tuesday when we got back from the holiday. And then on Wednesday, we had a big reaction to the Iranian, excuse me, yes, the Ukrainians blowing up a landing ship in Crimea and all the reaction that might or might happen. That gave us a pop, but there wasn't any secondary reaction from the Russians or other things around that. So the market's kind of settled back towards the end of the week. This week's exports were solid on and really actually a positive on the corn, but beans and wheat were lackluster. And then here we are going into another weekend. And so the market was basically taking everything back down towards the recent lows as we go into 2024 on here on the market reactions. Kind of what we kind of suggested here over the last couple of weeks is that this market tends to end up being a choppy affair, back and forth, kind of reacting to short-term stuff. And there's really not a lot of new participants, and a lot of our bigger participants are on the sidelines this time of year. So to some extent here, we're going to start fresh here after in the new year. And it'll even take a few days to get to some of these traders back in the markets here, because January 12th is when the USDA is going to finalize a lot of USDA data. And so at this point, the market's still going to be watching that stuff going forward.
And what are you anticipating about the upcoming USD report on January 12th?
Well, we've got a lot of things coming out. The first thing we need to kind of look at is what kind of idea do we think corn and soybeans, excuse me, corn and soybean production might do. To some extent, we've had the past some interesting adjustments that came through on planted areas and things like that. I think though the USDA has made some of those adjustments sooner in the season, and so I don't know that we're going to have a big change in the number of areas of plantings. Last year we had a pretty good decline in soybean plantings late in the season, but overall I'm kind of looking for 60 million, excuse me, 60,000 acre increase uh, in soybeans and maybe a 60,000 acre decline in corn. There's a minor adjustments. The key feature is how are these yields going to adjust? And that I think there is going to be some late adjustments. I'm uh, in the fact that the late season heat here that hit the Midwest, I think is going to slip back some of the yields. Not big, but right now I'm anticipating the fact that both corn and soybeans overall yield output will be down about 70 million or so on corn. And on soybeans, I'm looking for a 31 million decline. That is also kind of follows a kind of a long tradition that's going on here on these January numbers as adjustment versus November. In corn, 7 out of the last 10 years, we've seen this kind of decline. Not It depends on the year and things like that on output and that, but we've had these levels of adjustments here on yields. Looking at it in the 2 bushel scenario down and up. And last year, interestingly enough, when corn it did go up, that was one of the 3 years that out of the last 10 that went up versus November. Wasn't the case though in soybeans. They've had 7 out of the last 8 years have seen their last yield slip on the things we've gone into this January event. Now, to some extent, that's most cases here. The fluctuation's been 2 to maybe 6 tenths of a bushel. I'm actually looking for 4 tenths this time around. I think we've had a couple 7 tenths of a bushel decline. Now, if that's tied in with a big adjustment in acreages, then we could have some bigger total crop sizes. But at this point, I'm not looking for a lot of change, but ultimately 31 million, if we're talking 245 million, is where our stocks reports are at this point currently on beans. Wow, there you go. It's 215 million. That's making things a little more interesting as we go forward. Now, other things are being involved right now, at least. The other big, one of the big factors that people watch at the same time here. It's going to end up being our quarterly stocks numbers. Uh, my calculations on beans, I'm definitely looking for a very strong crush statistic. The first 3 months of the year looks like we're going to be about 53 million higher than last year. But on the same side of the ledger there on the excuse me, export activity for beans. That's going to be down 114 or so. Even if we have a smaller stocks numbers here, or smaller output, I should say, and that our stocks numbers are going to be down from last year, but not going to be outrageously uh, different. I think I'm looking for a number here. Let me think here. I guess let's make sure I got it right over here to the side of me. From there, oh yeah, we're looking for 66 million to 70 million less than last year in that. So that would be the lowest in 3 years. But if it went all the way down to uh, 2.95 billion, that could be clear back to 2017. So that'd be a little more opportunity. It's always interesting putting together the combination of the production numbers and also the residual that's kind of calculates through the year in soybeans, just because the fact that it's a zero-sum game there. In the corn side of the ledger, we have feed usage, and that is not something we calculate on actual checking how much is fed at the farm level or how much goes through an elevator and then comes back out as feed usage, things of that nature. So but soybeans, either it's exported or it's sent to U.S. processors, and that's where we end up getting the crush statistics or the export statistics. And so we could have some residual or hard to determine levels, but they usually stay around 25 to 35 million. On corn, we can have a lot bigger swings on that. But right now, on the soybean side of things, I really feel like that could be an interesting twist on here as we pull this U.S. ending carryover stock down. But on a quarterly basis here, we're going to have the first indications of how our demand is really kind of stacking up here, comparison to a year ago, from that standpoint.
Well, before
The corn side of
Christmas,
things,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, I better handle quick corn here. Well, I'm kind of running out of breath, though. You know that I am. At this point, the corn side of things on the demand, uh, right at this point, the export activity is up from last year. I think we're about somewhere around 70 million or more on export activity. We actually on our sales are even better than that than last year. Uh, the biggest thing that's going on right now is that the South America and the Brazilians are continuing to finish up their shipments that they priced out here earlier this year. And the China is a major buyer on those things. So right now they're taking Brazilian beans, excuse me, Brazilian corn. On the ethanol side, that number is we're getting a final number on that Tuesday for the month of November, but it sure looks like that we're going to be running about 65 million higher on corn ethanol usage. Now, unfortunately, when you have 15 million bushel crop, a 60 million increase in quarterly demand doesn't take a big dent in it. So that's our unfortunate situation on the corn side right now is that if we have a smaller crop size of 70 million, maybe we have a little stronger ethanol demand. Exports shipping a few more along, but we're still going to have a carryover stock that on an overall basis here going to stay above 15 billion. So we really have to get more concerns building in South America about their crop size. Because I think the one thing that this whole extended issues down there in Brazil has really pushed a big a bunch of producers down there to not consider planting corn behind their soybeans, partly because it's a crop that takes a lot of moisture, and also to some extent, I think they still feel like that soybeans is going to be a better crop, even if they put it in late. And the other kind of wild card that we've been picking up on the news is that some people down in Brazil are thinking about expanding or even their cotton uh, second crop corn, second crop. They call it safrinha corn, it's second crop, but instead of planting that, they're thinking about and expanding their cotton crop. And they've do that in the past, and that could make an interesting thing. You put that together, we could have a bigger number on the Brazilian corn crop going out of this thing from the USDA, because that's going to be another big feature is what does the USDA do with their numbers? They're still at 160 and 61. They haven't made any kind of adjustment on their corn production number so far this year. They're 127. There's a lot of private forecasters down there, 120, 118, 117. That's even at or just a little bit below what they produced last year. And on the soybean side, a number that is bouncing around is also right around the one. Well, it's 153 is what a really prominent, very good analyst that watches it closely is 153. I think last year's output was 157. So there you go. We're all the optimism of expanded crops in Brazil could have been knocked down because of poor weather.
Yes, one of the questions we had from one of our new subscribers is about the situation in Argentina. We got some. We mentioned about the unchanged taxes, but at the end, the export taxes were increased. for soybeans, but it's pretty hard to imagine what will happen in 3 or 4 or 5 months in Argentina, right?
That is really a huge wild card. I know the new libertarian president has lots of big plans, but the interesting thing about it is there's been, since he's not from the Peron party, he's not from the social democrats or the type situations and that. I saw an update this week that in the House he only has about 15% of the whole Congress is officially supporting him. Well, that's a you need 50 or 60%. And so that's going to be real interesting as to how this fills out. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think there's lots of optimism he was going to eliminate taxes. Well, unfortunately, he still has to have taxes to run the government. And so now he's decided to increase oil and meals taxes up to the same level as the bean uh, taxes of 33%. And don't forget, he's also uh, increased corn and wheat up to 15% from 12. So, you know, it's always interesting when you're running for government. Sometimes when you get in there, you have to also deal with the reality of budgets and all that type of thing. And so it's going to be very interesting how this all works itself out. I know that everybody's hoping that some magic elixir is going to help them work out. Because the one thing about it is, I think the concept of having less taxes and more demand and all that type of stuff is there. But the problem is that they still have to get to a better economic reality down there, and unfortunately, uh, you start losing things. Like, unfortunately for them, last year in Argentina, the weather was terrible. They lost a whole bunch of income on reduced taxes that they had last year because there just wasn't any crops. And unfortunately, if there's a situation in their tax gathering situation where they could actually get just a sales tax of 1 or 2%. I think that would help, but unfortunately, that isn't available to them. So that's why they've over the years utilized exports because, of course, you got to pay your taxes if you're going to put it in the boat to send it overseas. So they had a way of making sure that they got their money in that situation versus scofflaws that happen in the basic economy. So that's been very interesting development over the years. I hope that, like all of us do, that they uh, can get some of their economic things in order. But it's not going to be an easy situation, to say the least.
Yes, but I have no reason to believe that the Argentinian farmers will plant less of beans or any other.
No, I don't think there's going to be a lot less and plannings. I think the key thing is where they're going to happen here in this coming spring and things like that. The weather definitely is so much more. It's cooperating. I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means. There's issues down there in certain places in Argentina, but that's the other part of the reason why that some of the impacts of the problems in Brazil have not really had as big an impact as because of the fact that there's an assumption that the corn supply was around 33 million metric tons last year, maybe 34, and that it's back up and anticipated to be 48 to 50 million metric tons. Soybeans were 24, uh, and now they think there could be 50 or higher on soybeans. So that's going to be a compensating factor for the total world supplies out there. I wouldn't say that with one coming down from expectations, the other going up, it's going to make overburden things, but at the same time, it takes away some of the emotions of some of the things. Because we've had some really extended periods of time in Brazil here with certain major producing areas haven't had the best of rains. And it's really so wide open here as to what our final yields are going to be in Brazil. There's still a lot of uncertainty there. I think that the Argentina's Bounce back in yields is coming, but the in output, but the biggest question is how big impact has this weather been? Uh, Having it this dry, this early, this long is something that hasn't happened. I think that everybody keeps going back to the 2015-16 year is the so-called comparison year. And they had a really significant setback that year. I think we're talking about 20, 25% outputs in Brazil. Like some of what happened even more in Argentina last year. So I think their situation. We're talking about 40 to 45% impacts on some of those crops down there because of the very poor weather. So uh, we've got a long ways to go here till we start to get finalized numbers, and which will come to the focus maybe in February and March of this year.
Yes, let's see. I think that's it. I think we wrapped everything, Jerry. I hope you have a happy new year.
Oh yes, yes, we'll be starting to get more things discussed and looked at ahead of the January 12th reports. We're also going to be looking at the U.S. winter wheat seedings. We're going to also be looking at the U.S. supply demand carryover stocks in a little more detail next week. But I'd have to say that right now, at least, we've kind of, hopefully, we kind of continue to move sideways here and don't hurt the charts any more than they are right now. They're been bouncing around here, and they, at this point, at least, we'll see what the rains that are projected for parts of northern Brazil this weekend, how they come through. Hope At this point, I kind of feel like there's still some uncertainty because as they say, they might after this rain, there's nothing in the hopper there for the first 10 days or so of January. So it could be one day flash, and then we're not worried about what kind of crop size we're going to have down there in South America. It has been a touchy situation all winter.
All right, we'll see you in 2024.
Yes, sir. And you have a happy new year yourself.